These BNlink 10-gallon grow bags have been fantastic, but it's time to move the African Nightcrawlers into a forever home, and that is where we're building this tote that I show you on the right. Now let me go through the build process. Alright, we're jumping right in today. So these bags have served me really well. In fact, oh wow, look at all the African Nightcrawlers on top here. Almost had red wigglers, but these are African Nightcrawlers on top of my bag right there. Let's just check this one out too. Anything? Oh, we got one sneaking down in there. These have served me really well so far, but I think the worms need an upgrade. So we're going to go ahead and build something new. All right, let's just go over what we have here. I've got two 14-gallon totes. These are the same size. They're actually both the same company, just different lids, because if you look for them when they go on sale, sometimes these different colored lids, like they'll have green or red, they go on sale. So I've got a yellow one and a red one, but these are two 14-gallon bins. I've got a drill, I've got a 1/2-inch drill bit, I've got a glue gun, I have some mesh netting here to keep bugs out, I have a PVC pipe, and of course some glue sticks over here for the glue gun, and I've got some burlap, which we're going to use for the bottom. So that's the materials for this build. It's pretty simple. But actually, there's one other thing that I will need that I'm looking at this. I didn't think about it. Let me just go ahead and grab that too. A cutter for the pipe that we have here. So we're going to cut this in equal sections. This is going to be our base that holds up the tote that's going to be inside the other tote. And we're going to drill some holes in it. So there's a few pieces to this to get going, but this is going to make a nice large system that should still be movable. I feel like this is the largest size you can get and still have it be somewhat movable in some way. Once you get above this size, it just gets way too heavy. So with that, let's go start the build. All right, the first part to this is I want to drill holes in this one tote. So I'm going to mark off a little notch here about every 2 inches, about where I want to drill. This is basically right down the center, but I'm going to be drilling every 2 inches here. So I'm just marking it off, and I'll go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Alright, quick note while I'm drilling here, I do have the lid on the bottom to catch all the little plastic pieces that go through, and you can use a spade bit. You don't need one of these bits, and you want to be very careful when doing this. I am wearing glasses. Oops. And make sure you have it on drill mode. Alright, there's our first set of holes. I'm going to go ahead and use some magic here and get the rest of those holes in. But after this, I am going to want to clean it up with a utility knife. So you want to make sure after you do this, you come through and just clean them up. Just like this. And that way they're nice and smooth. Alright, you don't want to have all these rough patches that can rip up the worm. So you're going to want to smooth these out after you do this. Be back in just a minute. And look at that. We are done with this. Now what I did is I drilled all these holes, and probably a spade bit would have worked a little bit better. These were really stuck on there as far as the way that they were, but I drilled all the way down. They're not perfectly all aligned, but that's fine. Some of them are a little harder to drill, especially on these ridge lines. And I wanted to make sure I had some on the center here. Now I also, while we're here, I've got the lid on here right now, but I also did the inside and made sure that this is all pretty smooth as well. As you can see, I just run my hands along. Oops, a little bit rough right there. I might have to smooth that one out a little bit. But I can rub my hands along, and it's no big deal. This is also very smooth inside. Remember, once this gets some weight in it, this is going to push down. So I did want one right here in the center to make sure that any water would sort of drain out. And that is the plan behind that as well. So with that, this is now ready. This section right here, and that's where we can get this ready. But right now, the next part is the lid. And as you can see right here, we need to cut out squares in here, and we need to put some netting on here so that way air can get out and we can get that air transfer going to make sure that there's enough oxygen in the system, but also the system can vent the gases that it has. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and use a utility knife. I'm going to flip this over, and the plan is to use a utility knife to cut out some of these squares here. Now, how many you cut out is up to you. I think I'm just going to kind of cut a couple, across from each other and just kind of even it up, and then we'll figure it out from there. But right now, let's see, I'm going to probably put at least maybe these two in the center here. So let me just show you. This is what I plan to do, is just use this as a guide, poke through, and just make lines like this. And this is perfectly lines up which is what's great. Makes it easy to cut these out. Just like this. Look at that. So you get a perfect square every time. And that is what I plan to do. And I'm just going to kind of cut out a whole random hodgepodge. I'm just trying to find the square here. So you can see then you get these little squares off like this. And these will be perfect for attaching our netting to, so that way we can make sure that nothing is able to get in, including fruit flies, which is my biggest worry so far. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and cut out a whole bunch more of these and we'll come right back. And just like that, we've got our holes cut in here. Now this is ready for screen. I'm going to be putting the screen on top instead of underneath, I think. I think that'll just be easier to do because I can kind of layer in some hot glue around here. And this is a gap, and then I can kind of lay it in and push it down into the hot glue and make sure that this is fully sealed. So I think it'll be easier on this side than where this is raised up and these are fallen, and might be a little bit harder. So I'm going to definitely put it on this top section here for that screen. But before we do that, there's another piece I'm going to add to hot glue as well. And I showed it at the beginning here, but that is pipe. So I really want to have something that's sitting in there that's going to raise this other bin. Let me just grab one here. It's going to raise the bin up, because right now when you nest these in, they nest perfectly and they'll fall all the way down. My original thought was to actually have pipes in here like this, but this isn't quite tall enough. It just needs to be a little bit taller, and really it should be even a little bit taller than this. This is about 2 inches, this is 3 inches, and it needs to be about 4 inches of height. Now, I originally thought I could cut this with my pipe cutter. I realized that this is actually bigger than what I have. So I'm going to have to cut this either on a circular saw, or I can cut this pipe and have a whole bunch of little places where it can hold this up. And I think that might be what I'll do, is I'll cut this off in 4-inch lengths, and I have 2 of these, and then I can hot glue them down in multiple locations to make it where this is sort of centered, instead of just having a couple of large ones. If it needs more reinforcement, I can always cut this up later and add that, but I think we're going to do that. So to do that, I have this right here, which is a little cutter. This is meant for cutting these pipes. Now the first thing I need to do is go ahead and measure this off and go ahead and cut it. All right, so as you can see here, this pipe is exactly 24 inches. I'm going to get 6 sections at 4 inches a piece. Now let's go ahead and cut this. And hold on, I got to open it up all the way first. And you can see right here, this is how you cut this with a pipe cutter. Yeah, we're just going to cut this into multiple pieces like this, and we're going to hot glue these down along with those other sections that we need to hot glue. Now, if we need more, as I said, I can always add more, and I can always add larger pieces later if I need to add more support. So, and if you need something else to cut this, you always can use a reciprocating saw or something like that as well. So all right, so now we should have pretty equal sections here, as long as it's measured off properly. And then what I'd like to do is just sort of hot glue these probably in the center here. Actually, probably around the outside now that I'm thinking about it. And then that way the center can droop a little bit, and that way it can run off. I was going to say something like this. So there's the pattern I think I'm looking for right there for hot gluing these in. And what I'll do is I'll just put some hot glue down and then just press them in place. And then we'll do the screen as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera because this is going to take me a minute to heat up the glue gun and everything, and we'll come back when this is done. All right, hot glue gun is warmed up. I just want to show you how I'm going to do this here. I'm just going to put a big dollop of hot glue on the bottom here because this is going underneath the other bin. Doesn't really matter quite as much, and then we're just going to pop it in there. And it doesn't matter really how much I get on there because, as I said, this is going to be underneath the other system anyhow. So it's okay if we have a little extra. I might have had this up a little too high. By the way, I'm sure you all noticed I'm using a lot of Rigid tools. I'm a big fan of Rigid. They have a lifetime service agreement on their tools. I'm not sponsored by them, although if they'd like to sponsor me, that'd be great. I do like their tools. I have, I think, all of them, or almost all of them. So I'm a big fan of their products. Now, as you can see, there's also some strings down here. I'm going to get rid of those later. I can always rip those up. But there we go. That is on. And those will go ahead and dry. Ooh, almost dropped that. All right. Now, that's going to go ahead and dry. Or I should say cool down and then solidify. Just going to pull out some of these strings while I can pretty easily. They can be cut out later. If I need to, I can also reinforce these as well. Or, as I said, add more. I can add one in the center. I've got another pipe that's this size that I can do this for as well. All right, maybe it's a little bit still too wet right there, but there we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put this off to the side. Now the next part that I also need to hot glue are these pieces right here. So what I have, just so you can see right here, and I definitely think this is too high. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down. I thought this was on a different glue. All right, so as you can see right here, I've got quite a big piece right here. And I'm going to leave, by the way, I'll leave links to all this down below, but I'm going to cut off large pieces for this. I don't want to underdo it. So I'm going to go ahead and just take it just like that, cut a piece off. I can lay this in, put the hot glue in. Let's just go ahead and cut all of these first. Make sure that all these are taken off. I can always trim it up later, but I want to make sure I have enough to cover everything. What I mean by that is, kind of go between these two pieces right here. I want to make sure I've got enough. So we're going to go ahead and, oops, didn't quite cut that one enough. By the way, this stuff is supposed to be for fruit flies and things like that. It's supposed to keep everything out, which is why I have this as the mesh netting that I'm using, rather than having some aluminum mesh, which I debated on getting as well. I was worried that that might not be able to keep out the fruit flies and things like that, which is very important for these systems, if you can't tell, to keep out fruit flies. But this is also very easy to cut, very easy to manage. Oh, kind of ripping there a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to cut all this up and clean it up afterwards anyhow. So there we go. We've got that. Now we need our hot glue again. And again, as I said, I've got that going right here. In fact, I'm going to grab one other thing, I think, before we start this. I think I'm going to grab some gloves so I can kind of push this in and not burn my hands. All right, so we're going to do one of these together, and then I'll do the rest of them on the side here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a very generous glob. I'm going to have to grab another stick here. Oh, hold on just a second here. I got to grab another stick. Luckily, I've got one ready to go. Very generous glob all the way around. I want to make sure that this is fully sealed. You don't want to let any gaps. There we go. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to lay this over top and just kind of push it down in there. I have gloves on so that way I don't burn my hands. It's okay that it's grabbing a little bit. I'll clean these gloves up later. Big thing is you don't want gaps in here, because if there's gaps, stuff's going to get in, and that's not what you want. So there we go. And see this stuff right here? This stuff will just peel right off my glove. This is a leather glove. It's meant for some heat. We'll see how well that's going to work. Maybe I should have done the other side. All right, hold on here. We're going to add a little bit of hot glue to the top here and just let that kind of soak through. See if that works maybe a little better. I was going to say, probably the biggest problem is right here where it's popping up. See if we can get it to seal off that way. But we really want to make sure that this is sealed pretty well. And you can also use other glues. I'm just happen to be using hot glue. By the way, I just realized it's not in view, but this corner right here is popping up because it's hitting that seam. Let me just The idea is that eventually what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to cut all of these off. We'll see how this works. We might have to use a different glue though on the next ones. We'll see. Alright, I made an executive decision. I flipped this over and I'm gluing these to the bottom now. I've glued 2 of them. This is a lot easier to glue this way. And I'm going to just go ahead and do this one up top over here. So we're just going to make a nice bead all the way around. It doesn't have to be real thick, I've realized, but you want to make sure that there's no gaps. Because if there's gaps, that means stuff can get through the other way as well, such as bugs. So we're going to do that. Let this cool for just a second so it's got a good chance of adhering very well. And then we're going to go ahead and push it down. And now what I've been doing is I've been grabbing this red piece right here, which is part of just the lid that I cut off, and just pressing it down to make sure it's in the glue. And then just pulling it away, and we get some little strings here, but that's okay. This is just hot glue. And then it'll cool down, and that's going to make a nice seal for everything. So I've already done 2. This is the 3rd one. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and we'll come right back. Alright, now we have all of these glued down. As you can tell, I still have some glue here on the top from when I tried doing it on the top. I'm just going to leave that there, unfortunately. Next time I'll know better and just do it on the underside to make it nice and clean. Now with that, let's put this system together and show you how it's going to work. Alright, let's put the system together fully now. So as you can see, here's our bottom bin. We've got our little tubes glued here. I'm not too worried. They're going to get a lot of pressure going down. Then we're going to go ahead and put our second layer on. This is, as you can see, it's going to make it where there is an air gap on the side now, so some air can get underneath. Now it's not going to be as much unless I drill some holes, which maybe I will. Maybe eventually I'll drill some holes in this system right here on the side to let more air through. But for right now we're going to try it this way. Then we have our lid. Now I did not add a spigot this time. So I did think about doing that and adding a spigot to the system, but I really felt like getting liquid out of the system is not something that's going to happen. Now, as I said, this is a 14-gallon tote. This should be easy enough to move. Also, if you wanted to do a harvest, you could easily take this out and dump it out. As you can see right here, this bottom is going to flex. So that way, if there's any water, it'll hopefully run towards this center section and just drain right out into the system below. So that's the plan behind this. Now, for the other part that's going to happen with it, let me just go grab the pieces. To get this system started, the one thing I did want to do is I wanted to layer in some burlap. Now, there's a lot of burlap here. I don't need quite this much. So we're going to just kind of cut this off probably. I'm just trying to see here. I want a few layers in there probably. As you can see, this is burlap that's very, very natural material. And it's flaking apart like crazy, which is just fine. So there we go. About right there, I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And we're going to go ahead and put this in here. And the idea behind this is just to kind of clog up the holes a little bit at the beginning here. Sorry about all the bottles shaking there in the bottom. Oh, actually cutting 2 layers. I thought I only had 1 there. But the idea behind this is to, kind of clog up the system a little bit at the beginning here, see how this works. We can always then use paper to kind of clog those holes. I just wasn't sure how quickly stuff would run out of that material down there. Now, the other part to this is that we do have an open, as you saw, the lid. And we might need to add bubble wrap to that to help the system kind of maintain its moisture level. If it's getting too much airflow and it's getting too much air transfer or oxygen transfer, we might need to actually, add that bubble wrap to the top, block it off a little bit, or a tarp, which can work just like I do in my other systems where I've had tarps on top, and that way it kind of maintains the system. There we go. There's almost. There we go. Now we've got it. Let me throw that all to the side here, close my knife, and now we've got this nice little bedding in the bottom. Now, the last part to this that I want to do is I want to do something different for my worms. And this is where I mentioned in the title and everything that I want to add some thermal mass to this. This isn't a large system, but I think it's big enough to do this. It might be nice to be a little bit bigger, but I want to add essentially my pre-compost as I'm composting it. So I'm going to make a batch of pre-compost. We're going to add it to one side, after we get the worms in here. So right now, let's go get those worms and let's go ahead and add them to the system. All right, here comes the fun part of this entire project, and that is moving the worms over into their new system. Now, I know that these sort of look the same size, but you have to remember, these bags, while being 10 gallons, and I know this is 14 gallons, these are nowhere near full. But I just think that this is going to work a lot better for these worms in the long run. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the top of this one. You can see it's kind of wet on top there. We're going to put this off to the side. And we're going to go ahead and just dump all of this in here. All right. And these BNlink bags have been working really well. All right. Let's just see how we're doing here. I'm just going to scrape out the bottom here. Hopefully there's no cocoons in here or anything like that. It looks like we have lots of pot worms in here and some mites. Just looking in there. Might be able to see them. You can probably see some pot worms and maybe some mites on the side. So, and it looks like we had some mold or something growing on the side of this as well. And it looks like we have some on the other bag as well. This system was not, the two bag system next to each other was not going to work, I feel, in the long run. You can see this is actually really broken up, starting to break up nicely here. Look at these worms though. The worms are looking great. I have to say this system was really, really good for the African Nightcrawlers. They did a great job in this system. But I just feel like this system was never going to be able to grow the worms that I needed. All right, so with that, well, maybe we're going to have a little bit less room than I thought in here, because I haven't even dumped the other one in yet. The castings also look really good in here, but what I'm hoping to eventually do in this system now is side-to-side harvests. And that's going to be a lot easier than me dumping these out constantly, trying to get them, the worms to sort them and everything. And this way I'm going to be able to just do these side-to-side harvests, and it'll be hopefully a lot easier. We're also going to have to add a lot more water to this once we get this going. So, all right, there's one bag. Let's go ahead and pull the top off the other bag. And we can see there's a lot of moisture on there as well. Looks good. And we just fold this bag down. This is one nice thing about these. You can just kind of press these away. Let's pull this up and in as well. Whew, actually this is really full. And look at that. You can see the bottom there. It's got a brown layer on the bottom where there was stuff seeping through the bag. Add that to the system. All right. Woo. All right. Now this is a lot more full than I thought it was. I was going to add some pre-compost, but we're not going to be able to probably. And you can see there's more mold on that. This way everything is in a system. It's nicely contained. This is really, this bottom section, no odor, but it's definitely starting to get compressed in there. Now, a little bit of odor right there. There's a big block of something right here. It looks like lots of what looks like pot worms on there. So I'm hoping this will sort of make the system a little better, give it a little bit more air to breathe. Oh, this is a lot bigger than I thought. A lot more worms, hopefully, in here than, especially after we do this. I'm hoping that they'll be able to multiply a little better. What we're going to do is we're going to dig on this side. We're going to go ahead and do our sort of pre-composting over here. We're going to add material on this side. And actually, before I do that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get all this other stuff out of the way because I don't need this in the way anymore. There we go. Kind of like that. Now, the first thing that this is going to need is definitely some moisture. We got to really make sure we take care of these worms. We're going to add a pile of food and material on this side over here. And we're going to let that break down. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this to one side. And the eventual goal is to have it where I can go side to side and kind of harvest the castings from this as well. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to sort of make, in this system, and I got to pull off a glove here so I can move some stuff around without getting everything dirty. We're going to add, first off, we're going to add some of our food to this side. Let me just go ahead and add a nice big dollop of food, because we do want this to heat up. All right, there's our food right there. And this is going to get good airflow in here this time, so we don't have to worry about that quite as much. And I'm going to move the lid off to the side here. I'm going to grab some fish water. I'm going to grab little containers of it. and add it to the system, just like we normally do for our systems. Just need to grab a container to grab the water. We're going to go ahead and add it to this side. Now remember, the water can still run out the bottom on this, and then we can dump it or we can do what we want with it. But that way there's plenty of space below for this water to run, which you really didn't get as much of in the bag system. All right, that might be good for the water. For right now, let me just check. Let's just mix this up a little bit. Oh, maybe not. We really need a lot of water in here. But right now, this might be okay for right now. We're going to go ahead and also add... I grab a worm in there? Thought I grabbed a worm in there. I didn't want to maneuver them around quite as much like I'm doing this. Now what we need to do is we also need to add some bedding material. We're going to add a lot of bedding here. Oh, this is just a small amount. We're going to add a lot of bedding here. Sorry, I'm down towards the end of my bedding that I have on the side over here, so I've got to add it in a little bit slowly. And that might be good, because remember, we also need to cover this as well. Now what I want to do is I want to add some of my biochar, which I have in a bucket right here. I'm just going to pour some of that in. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach in here and grab some with my hands, because some of it is just sitting on the bottom here, just like this. I'm going to add a whole lot of that to the system and really try to get this going. So what happens is the biochar sort of settles in the bucket over here to the side, and then I've got to spread it out. So that's what I want to do right there. We want to add more fish water to this as well, which we will in just a minute. Let's just go ahead and add a little bit more of the liquid from the biochar bucket, which is also fish water as well. But there we go. That is a nice biochar mess right there. Man, I'll wash this shirt after this. All right. Now, let me grab some more fish water. Pour that on my glove, kind of clean my glove off a little bit. I want to make sure we get all of this cardboard wet. Remember, we're making pre-compost here just like we did, but we're just making a smaller batch of it in this system so it'll heat up. And this is what I'm hoping will end up being a thermal mass for these worms to keep them warmer in the basement here. And I think that's part of the reason why this system was doing so well with the bags, as they were warming up, because I kept doing this. But I would like to do this in a larger system, and I really want to try to recover as many of these worms as I can to keep this system going. But not only that, but keep more African Nightcrawlers in my system. And if this works, it's another way to keep these worms, and it's another thing that you've learned from me, or maybe from other people. It's okay. I don't mind. I don't mind taking credit. Sure as heck don't mind other people taking credit. All right, here water running out the bottom now. So that means there's probably enough water in here. So I think we're good right now on water. We're good at having everything mixed in. All right, I think we're ready now. Now, as I said before, it's okay to have water running out the bottom. It's going to just dry up in the bottom, and we've got some good airflow in here. So that's perfectly fine. So with that, what we're going to do though is we want to cover this. Now the worms, this is what's great about this system now. This is going to heat up. This side over here, it's going to heat up. It's just, that's what it's going to do. It's going to heat up. It's going to add lots of moisture to the system. That moisture is going to spread around in here. And what's going to happen is the worms are going to dig into that as it gets down to the temperature that they like. And then if it gets too hot, they'll leave and they'll come over to this side and they'll cool down. And then eventually they're going to go through all this material. This is all going to be castings. And then the idea is going to be to do a harvest. And what I would like to eventually have with this system, and I know 14 gallons is a little bit hard with this because it is still kind of tiny, is I'd like to have it where now that we've done this side and we did the feeding, what we're going to do is we're going to let this cook down. We're going to let the worms eat all this. And then we're going to come in and we're going to harvest, hopefully, this side over here. We're going to leave this side alone. This side is partially harvested, but there's a lot of paper in here. Hopefully they'll Maybe the worms will take off. They'll really start moving around and eating this stuff. I don't know. But I think that they're really going to like this side with the heat that's going to come with it. And then hopefully they'll start depositing their castings on the top. We'll be able to do a harvest on one side, or maybe a top harvest to lower the content in here. And they'll be able to move from there. Man, there's a lot of potworms in here, though. I can see them in this pile right here. Lots of potworms. So that's what happens. Actually, more over here. You can see right in here. Those look like potworms to me. I don't think they're fruit fly larvae, or at least I hope not. But hopefully we'll know pretty quickly if they are, because this is going to be pretty well trapped as far as the creatures in here. And we'll know pretty quickly whether they're fruit fly or not. So with that, let's go ahead and cover the system up. I'm just going to rinse my glove off here real quick. And we're going to cover this system up. Now, the one thing that I thought of is that, remember now, there's one side that I added glue on. And well, because of that, we're going to put that on the side that we last fed. And this is filled up pretty well to the top, but it is ready to go and ready to sit. So thank you for watching. I know this is a longer video. If you have questions or comments or anything, please leave them down below. And then check out some of my other videos. Check out the one on the BNlink that I made. It was a great system, and I highly recommend you watch the full playlist of that to see where these African Nightcrawlers are going. Or you could check out the urban worm bag that I just harvested. So with that, please check out those videos.